that was one hell of a night. If you can imagine being in a place that is dark as your fucking closet, except that place is basically 1.5 by 1.5 square miles. And in that area, there's somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 people shooting at each other with automatic weapons. Alright everybody, Terrence Popp here with another episode of Live from the Lair. I'm feeling a lot better. Still a little congested, but I always am because I got a deviated septum. So it is what it is. Now, I was talking with some guys I served with over the weekend on the phone. A couple of these guys are permanently fucking broken. I would say much worse than me. It came up in the conversation that with the amount of time that I have put in, all of the fucking wars and operations, countless fucking injuries, getting wounded twice, having to deal with toxic leaders and incompetent motherfuckers, how I was so lucky, to make it 33 fucking years. And at first, I really didn't see it. I'm like, it wasn't that a big of a deal. But then, the more they talked about a lot of their shit, I was like, yeah, fuck. I got pretty fucking lucky on that one. And wow, I didn't think it would go that way. And I was pretty fortunate. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the soldiers and servicemen I served with over the past 3+ decades, and how I saw some of these guys just get fucking wrecked. First guy who comes to mind, we called him Cross-Eyed Fitz. He was, just for a short time, one of my platoon sergeants in 2nd Ranger Battalion. And he had a double burn-in. What that means is we were doing airborne operation. His main chute had like 2 blown panels in it. And he pulled his reserve chute and that steamrolled and he fucking steamrolled into the ground. And we thought for sure that he had broke his back because he had lost all feeling from like the waist down. They haul his ass to the hospital. I can't get out there to see him for I think 3 days. I get in there to the Madigan. I walk in the room. His wife leaves. The nurse leaves. Like he calls me close to the bed. And he fucking grabs me and he goes, "Bring me whiskey!" And I was like, "Fuck." So every day, 2 days, me or one of the other guys in the platoon would run him up a bottle of whiskey, sneak it up there, of course. And the weird thing with him was this: he didn't break his back or sever his spinal cord. What happened is he broke his pelvis, and they put a cage around the pelvis. They put screws into through the cage into his fucking bones, and every day they would fucking screw it a little bit closer until the bones touched, and it took about 2 weeks. So I remember when I went to see him one day, I dropped in there, and apparently he woke up somewhere like 2, 3 in the morning, and he had the feeling back in his legs, except that it felt like, the way he explained it to me, is he had a plethora of red ants crawling on his legs and stinging him from the waist down. And it was driving him fucking just batshit fucking crazy. I saw him a couple times after that. He had a walker, and then he had a cane, and then they medically retired him. He had, I think, 23 or 24 years in. I don't know what happened to him after that. But most of the guys that do that much time in the back, because he'd been there for decades, but when they decide to go back to Fort Living Room and hang out on the castle couch, they don't last too long. So I don't think he's still alive. I never really heard anything in regards to that. All right, now, as you know, I talked about it in some past videos. I was involved in the Panama invasion in 1989. I did the combat jump into Rio Hato with the 2nd Ranger Battalion. I think part of 3rd Bat was there. And we went toe-to-toe with the Macho Diamante, which is the Panamanian Special Forces, who are trained in the schools of America down in the States. So they're basically trained by us. And we went against the, I think it was the Panamanian 7th Armored Cavalry. That was one hell of a night. If you can imagine being in a place that is dark as your fucking closet, except that place is basically 1.5 by 1.5 square miles. And in that area, there's somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 people shooting at each other with automatic weapons. Occasionally a flare would go up. Spectre would spank on some people from, its orbit up there, and then we had little birds flying around. It was fucking a crazy, crazy night. I almost got zeroed out myself. You could catch up on that story. I'm not going to go into detail. Not in the story anyway. But little did I know, there were several Rangers from my company who got permanently fucked up. One of them got zeroed out. So that particular soldier, Ranger, got shot in the neck with an AK-47. Went in the side, came out right to base of his skull, basically killed him instantly, or as close as you can get. And he died. I told the story in the other one. And there was one of the Rangers in my company had broke his femur on the jump. Fucked. He had to put a rod in his bone, and shit never fucking heals right when they do shit like that. And I think instead of medically discharging him on the spot, they let him finish out his enlistment, and then he ETS'd with medical discharge and a VA rating, which I think was one of the more honorable things to do. I've heard through friends that particular Ranger still lives in pretty regular pain with an injury, because it never fucking feels right again. Whenever there's a big swing in temperature here, fucking, I have the whole orchestra going crazy through my fucking bones. I can sympathize with how he feels, except his started at 23 and mine started roughly around 48. So, he's probably had a much longer road that I had to go into.
Zuck the cuck drinks water like a duck, but he also drinks your data. So tell him and Google to shove your data up their schwing-schwangs by downloading the Brave browser. It's free, blocks online advertising, and protects your privacy and data from evil tech companies. You only see ads if you want to see them, and you get cryptocurrency for your attention. Don't let Zuck use you to make a buck. Download Brave by clicking on the link down below.
There was one other soldier there. Now, he didn't physically get zeroed out. I don't think he got injured too badly, no more than the rest of us on that jump. But he was involved in a couple of altercations at some of the blocking positions, and he burned down a lot of fucking people that were shooting at him, and he was shooting back. He never recovered. To this day, I think he's 100% psych now, under the care of the VA, on and off. And I write about this particular case, well, not exactly this case, but in regards to what happened to this particular soldier, because I never forgot it. And in my book, I basically say, be careful of the weapons you use, because not only do they kill the enemy, but also you at the same time, so use them sparingly. Well, in his particular instance, he really didn't have the luxury of being light-triggered or, using discretion. When you have dozens, if hundreds of people assaulting or trying to come through your area, you got to do what you got to do. And a lot of people don't realize this, but when you enlist in the Army, you write a check to the United States government up to and to include your life. And then there's fine print, which says, also your immortal fucking soul. And I think that's what happened to him. So I'm not going to say his name. It's not really good. And then I talked about the paralyzed guy I came across who he begged me to kill him. And I didn't because the medic was there. Because from what I saw of him on the ground, if I was in the similar stance, I would want to get zeroed out as well. And I know it's harsh, but it's just the way it is. And I thought that was pretty fucked up. Now, another stupid fucking thing that happens to soldiers. They enlist in the Army. They get through basic, AIT, airborne school, go to their duty station. Takes about 18 months to get up to E4, where they're making not really good money, but enough money to get in trouble with. And they always seem to buy one of two things: motorcycle or hot rod. I bought the hot rod. But a lot of guys who've opted for motorcycle, about a third of them wrecked that fucking bicycle or that motorcycle within a year of owning it, and a large percentage of them got relatively to seriously injured, some of them killed. And a lot of these guys that get seriously injured, especially when you are in the airborne infantry or in the airborne ranger or even in the infantry for that matter, you walk everywhere you go, you're carrying a bunch of weight. A lot of these guys, they don't heal up to 100%. They fall behind the power curve, medically discharged. Now, I didn't fall into that trap in the motorcycle. I bought the hot rod. I never wrapped it around a tree. Never crashed it. Came close. But, you know, it is what it is. I talked about my drag racing days and the spooky voice that, you know, spoke into my ear when I was doing over 160. He basically said, you know, if you keep doing this, you're going to die. And that was pretty much the last time I drag raced. You know, it is what it is. You know, and basically for the past 15 years, at least once a year, I've had to bury a soldier over some motorcycle shenanigan bullshit. So, gotta steer clear of that. Now, we're going to talk about some of the guys I saw, you know, get fucked up on just jump injuries. Now, back in the day when we all jumped pretty much the Crash 10 Charlies, which are very limited steering, and they would bring two people to the ground safely in full combat gear, they really didn't descend very slow. In fact, when you hit that ground, it was the equivalent of jumping off a garage. Now, when you're 18, not really a big deal. You're flexible, you're indestructible, you know, you're made of wire, steel, whatever. You know, you start getting older and you keep jumping. Every time you go out the door, you're rolling the dice on ending your career. And I saw tree landings with compound fractured legs, trees rammed through people's meat in their thighs. I saw a guy, his ass was ripped open. I mean, they were packing that shit with all full of cotton and sending him to the hospital for emergency surgery. Guys land on fucking barbed wire, get lacerated, laid open. Though those injuries, if they're not too deep, those are basically cosmetic. They just sew you back up and you get a good story to pull pussy in the bars. But with the amount of jumps I have, with the tree landings, the water landings, all the other crazy fucked up bullshit, the high winds, water, what have you. You know, I only really got fucking hurt in the Panama jump, and I got dinged up on a tree landing, on a runway landing, and then one in Yakima, and I thought it was going to be the softest landing ever, and it wound up being one of the hardest I've ever had. And I hit that ground like a goddamn freight train, to the point where I would say I was knocked out for a few seconds, because when I came to, I was dragging, and I did my canopy releases, but you know, I got lucky, you know. I mean, I rolled the dice many, many times, and you know, and I survived all that shit. Now, there's a few other itises we got to talk about here that I've seen a lot of people do to excess and wind up losing, you know, their career, getting demoted, or even court-martialed. Though I've never seen anyone actually convicted of courts-martial. I've seen people taken to courts-martial and acquitted. Well, that's another story. First one is called run your mouth-itis. It's pretty much self-explanatory. Anyone who's ever been in combat arms realizes that when a soldier stops bitching, you better start worrying, because that's when shit really gets fucked up. As long as there's some low-grade bitching going on, you know you're somewhere between the 2 points in the operation where things will either move along or move along somewhat smoothly. That's just the way it is. But then you always have one or two guys out there who just run their fucking mouth all the time about everything, you know, and they can't take a hint when you tell them to shut the fuck up, and they just keep going and keep going, and then sooner or later they run their mouth one too many times or to the wrong person. Boom, it's over. I've seen that at least half a dozen times. All right, I've seen this one about as many times, and I call this keep your dick in your pants-itis. Probably half a dozen times, soldiers that I've known, sergeants that were above me, were banging somebody else's goddamn wife. And the chain of command found out about it. Careers were ended. Shit went fucking south. You know, hell, I was in formation when I was in 9th ID. A corporal pulls his car up while we're in fucking formation, runs around the formation, and punches my platoon sergeant in the face because my platoon sergeant, was banging this corporal's wife. Now, this particular corporal was not in our battalion. He was in the 247. And when my commander found out what was going on, he told the corporal, "You may leave." That platoon sergeant, by that Friday, was gone. Whatever happened to him, I don't know. But I've seen similar things happen. So, my advice to you gentlemen, if you want to avoid the two-wave rifle range, animosity or bad karma or revenge, don't put your dick in any other man's woman. Don't do it. It is not worth it. Last but not least, and I've seen this one fucking zero out a few people. Fist-to-face-itis. Back in the day, we used to fight. I had quite a few myself. But the other individual knew it was going to happen, had the option to not participate, and decided to go ahead with the fisticuffs. And whatever happened, happened. When it happens in that regard, usually it's not a big deal if nobody gets permanently injured. I'm not talking about teeth getting knocked out or, stuff like that, or stitches. I'm talking about like concussions, broken collarbones, shit like that. But there are some individuals out there who decided that they were going to jump said soldier without his knowing, hit him with a weapon and royally fuck him up. You know, I'm not saying that the guy who was attacked didn't deserve it, because most people don't do that kind of thing completely unprovoked. I'm just saying, when it gets to that level, bad shit happens to you. So that is what me and my friends talked about. And man, I've covered all these stories leading up to this particular one, and I probably talked about each point of this. Each point in this particular story has its own story in the past. You guys just got to go find the videos and watch them. But anyway, that's me. I'll talk to you later.